So with this, we start our session. Now we call upon our keynote speaker for today's first session is Mr. Vishal Kapoor. Mr. Vishal Kapoor is the Chief Executive Officer of EASL. He is a practicing fellow of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers UK. He also holds a postgraduate degree in Public Administration from Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore, and has attended the Advanced Management Program in Public Policy from Indian School of Business, Hyderabad. At MOP, he was looking after distribution sector, official languages, and social media. He had been instrumental in formulating the revamped distribution sector scheme for operational and financial turnaround of distribution scheme. We welcome you, sir. The moderator, Mr. Ketan Shah. Mr. Ketan Shah leads the Cloud First Charter for Migration and Modernization Enterprise Platform and Industry Clouds at Accenture. He comes with 20 years of industry experience in driving large-scale business and technology transformation programs to enhance competitiveness, growth, and sustainable values. He helped global energy companies with an ecosystem partner with energy transition and growth strategies. We welcome you, sir. Our first speaker is Mr. Anil Rawal. Mr. Anil Rawal is the MD and CEO of IntelliSmart Infrastructure Private Limited. He is an ex-civil officer of batch 1996 and has more than 24 years of leadership experience across both corporate and government organizations. He is an IIM Ahmedabad alumni of 2007 batch, and since then he has been working with corporates, particularly in power sector. In government strength, Mr. Rawal has held various leadership positions in various capacities in financial, contractual, and commercial domain. He has also been actively involved in evolution of public domains, private partnership framework for power infrastructure projects in the country. We welcome you, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Arun Kumar Mishra. Mr. Arun Kumar Mishra has experience close to 37 years in power sector. His area of expertise includes engineering, project management of ICT system, policy planning, and resource mobilization for smart grids. He has been responsible for concept to commissioning of URTDSM comprising more than 1500 PMUs for predictive and proactive operational state observation and National Grid of India. Smart meter plan rollout for India on behalf of MOP 2018, standardization for smart meter plug and play communication module. Mr. Mishra is presently working as Executive Director, Grid Automation, ERP, IT, and Information Security at Power Grid. We welcome you, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Deepak Sharma, an accomplished global leader. Deepak Sharma is the Zone President Designate and MD and CEO Designate Schneider Electric India Private Limited. Mr. Sharma has 30 years of experience with 24 years at Schneider Electric Group and has done stint in India, France, China, and the USA across energy management and industrial automation global businesses. He is credited with making India one of our 4 global hubs of Schneider Electric post and the merger and integration of L&T Electrical and Automation business with Schneider Electric. He aims to contribute towards a more sustainable, more electric, more digital business and societal environment under his leadership. We welcome you, sir. The next speaker is Mr. Debashish Banerjee. Mr. Debashish Banerjee is an electrical engineer with proficiency in business management, having rich and diverse industry experience. Currently, he is managing director at CSC Limited. In his last stint as CEO of Reliance Energy, he contributed in improving operational efficiency and optimizing cost through business process, re-engineering and automation, thus increasing bottom line and customer delight. In his current capacity as MD Distribution of CSC, he has ushered in transformational journey for leapfrogging CSC to newer heights of excellence and enhanced operational resiliency and efficiency for effective business continuity during and after any crisis. He is engaged in developing an responsible and diverse value chain for powering a sustainable future. We welcome you, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Narcis Vidal. Narcis Vidal is the Vice President of Business Development and Sales for Africa, Asia, and Oceanic expertise, helping utilities solve their complex challenges on smart metering, smart grid, and digitalization. During his 20 years of experience in the energy sector, he has worked for NSA, NL, and LX as e-mobility and innovation project manager, e-mobility technical manager, head of e-mobility innovation, and head of e-mobility global technical sales. We welcome you, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Robert H.K. Demon. In his last 25 years, Mr. Demon has been managing international and interdisciplinary team across various businesses, during which he demonstrated his capability to national and interdisciplinary team across various business, during which he demonstrated his capability to set up a new transform business in different countries Before being appointed to his current role, Robert spent more than 10 years in China and was responsible for Siemens business there. We welcome you, sir. Our next speaker is Mr. Peter Hermans. Mr. Peter Hermans is an expert in European energy sector on energy transition and it is related development, market, technology, IT, data management, telecoms, and regulations. He served as CTO of Stedin DSO in Netherlands for 10 years, where he initiated strategic business program on unbundling smart metering, smart grid, Electra, and Stedin and Dutch energy sector. We welcome you, sir. And our final speaker is Mrs. Vera Silva. Under Vera's leadership, the engineering team is responsible for designing and producing world-class product and solution for grid solution customers, leading business and technology strategy, global accounts and commercial operations, marketing and communication for GE Grid Solutions, a $5 billion global business apart from GE Vernova. We welcome you, ma'am. Over to the moderator.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. This is a very august session. I think it is an achievement by itself, where we could have dignitaries on the likes to be accumulated on one dais. It'd be very difficult to get them into one room otherwise. My thinking is we could start a new utilities company with just the set of folks that we have on the panel in itself. Without much ado, and more importantly, in the interest of time, may I request Mr. Vishal Kapoor to please come and provide you a keynote address, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. We are living in exciting times. Are we? Yes. Okay. So on this positive note, India is being talked about as one of the shining spots in the currently tumultuous times in the global economy. And there are reasons for it. Only on the power sector, if we see, we have been increasing our per capita consumption on a predominantly good scale, and even after this, today the per capita consumption is almost around a third of the world's average. What does this mean? On one side, if you see it as a glass half full, then you may complain, but then the positive part is that we have to grow, and there is a significant potential to grow, and that is the glass getting filled up over the next few years. If you see India's growth story in the power sector, India has decided to grow, and it has decided to grow responsibly. We are an aspirational society, we have aware consumers, and as we have achieved the universal electricity access, the trends clearly demonstrate that people are not merely happy with just getting a lifeline electricity. They want more and more. The uptake of appliances is increasing at a hectic pace. The other day, I'll not name, but the other day I was interacting with one institution that works at the grassroots levels in the rural areas. And the kind of information that I got, even as an anecdotal evidence, I mean, it was just humongous, and it took me time to process as to what exactly is happening in the rural India. I mean, and as we move forward, we are going to see a significant uptick of electric appliance usage, moving away from the old age systems of drudgery, and moving more and more towards automation, and moving away from biomass cooking especially. We are seeing a tremendous tectonic shift as well. A modal shift in transport is clearly visible as we speak today. Only my company, my subsidiary company, CESL, has been able to generate, and not only generate, but put out bids of more than 15,000 buses, and almost 60% of which has already been contracted out by the CPSCs, by state transport undertakings. And this is huge. You can imagine this 15,000 buses only is creating a demand of 1 gigawatts of capacity, almost 1 gigawatts. And this is not the end. We have 150,000 buses plying for state transport undertakings, and we've just scratched the tip of the iceberg. Another study says that 60% of additional demand is going to, of the future demand will come from cooling applications. So this is the aspirational India, that this is the aspirational business opportunity that lies in await for the country. And renewables, I mean, the way the renewables have been percolating the electricity grid, it started with big solar parks, offshore wind farms, and these kind of things, and then it moved into the rooftop solar, and now the only third element of the electricity grid, that means distribution level 11 kV solar, is also now coming up in a big way, the government giving a lot of thrust on this. So almost every single portion of the electricity grid is getting injected with renewables. Now these all tectonic shifts need major grid management capabilities, and I always believe, as an engineer, as even I've worked in the policy side also, the 3 M's are important in any kind of management, and it holds also true for the power sector. Measure, monitor and modify. This is one thing that I believe in truly, and measurement is basically the fundamental thing, and measurement, the ICT is the best available avenue to make any kind of measurements, because it's real time, it enables you to do more accurate measurements. And that's why I think the digital ecosystem that India has already generated so far through the government interventions and also private investments, I think it's only going to increase. And to me, fundamentally, there may be 6 areas where we'll have to work to increase the uptake of the digital ecosystem journey. The first one being right selection. There is a lot of scope outside, humongous scope. Getting the best bang for the buck is extremely important, prioritization. And we have seen that happen. The smart grids, smart meters, all kinds of applications exist, the latent potential exists, but the country has gone ahead with smart metering as one of the major building blocks of smart grids, because in an overall understanding, smart meters deliver you the best bang for the buck. Second, generating data is not enough. Using information is. So once we have started this journey, I think we also need to identify what all data is available and then how we can use it, because if we do not use that data, we're not reaching anywhere, we're not getting the bang for the buck that is required. Smart meters are throwing up a lot of data. SCADA applications are throwing up a lot of data. We have applications today, very simple applications, which can actually figure out what kind of appliances are available in everyone's homes. And these kind of data applications, analytics, can enable utilities to make huge savings on the power procurement side. TOD, time of day tariffs, in a lot of states, industrial segments already have it, but now time has come that smart meters being one of the major tools to enable TOD metering in commercial as well as domestic segments. And the domestic demand being 40% almost is very, very important. A home may use a very less amount of electricity, but on an aggregate scale, if we see, it's a huge demand there, and which can be modified using suitable behavioral interventions, using suitable price signals. And here is where one policy imperative also comes in. The way these kind of time of day demands are actually made and constructed, that is an extremely important point, because several times such kind of measures also go awry. They lead to completely unintended consequences. This has been seen abroad, world over, in power as well as other sectors. I'll not get into it. But then the third major element, as I talked about, was the policy and the regulatory space. and the ecosystem surrounding it. I would be given to believe that I think a lot of talk that happens on the policy and regulatory space, I think it is more overrated. And I have reasons to say so, because policy and regulation as an enabler is one part of the story. But in my opinion, I think we can achieve much bigger things by ensuring that the policy and regulations that are becoming an impediment for take-up of technology, I think that is the most important thing. I said I have reasons to say so. Smart meterings as a concept was launched by the government in 2021 in form of a scheme. We all know that it's about a large scale implementation of almost 250 million smart meters for every single home and industry and commercial establishment. But having said that, was it absolutely required? Probably no, because we have seen some very progressive states such as Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, NDMC in New Delhi, and Bihar, who went ahead with a bulk rollout of smart meters way back in 2018. Was there a policy or a regulatory encumbrance at that point of time? No, it wasn't. It was just the intent which they actually came out with. And having said that, that has actually lent a lot of confidence in the government while rolling out such schemes. But that's why I say that I think many a times policy and regulatory space, I think the interventions may be quite overrated in terms of the perceptions amongst people and the demands. We have to go with this time-tested method of via negativa, remove the negatives rather than look for the positives. So that is one important thing. Most important thing in the overall framework, in my opinion, is the contractual frameworks. What we need to develop is a smart business model. Smart meters as well as electric buses, these are two very live examples of how a completely unviable solution was turned out into a viable solution. Bus as a service, smart meter as a service. Move CAPEX and OPEX together. Work on a total life cycle costing, TOTEX costing. And these two interventions in electric buses today, an electric bus, if you go and purchase it, it's about 1.5 to 2 times the cost of a diesel bus. But what the structuring of the contractual framework has ensured that we are discovering prices 31% lesser for electric buses than the normal diesel buses. Now, if somebody could say that, okay, if we go ahead, I think the regular normal way, we require subsidies from the government. But no, what we have seen is a clear-cut business model, which has been discovered incidentally by our subsidiary company CSL, and same thing was smart meters. In 2018, the prices came down from 5,500 rupees to 2,300, 2,700 range. And that is the success of the business model, which can beat every single other thing. Risk reward apportionment in the contracts is extremely important. Demystification is important. De-risking of the business model is extremely important. If you see, the biggest lie that is told around in the overall market circles is that we check that we tick that checkbox. I have read the terms and conditions of the contract, and I'm ready to abide with it. That is the biggest lie, because it is all signed without putting a much diligence into it. So what is important is understanding the risks, understanding the rewards. The business model has to be in sync with the risk reward relationships. Loading of risks only on one side, that is another problem, because if the business model puts all the risks on one side, then there is a problem here. So, and if you do that, then suitable hedging arrangements have to be there. So this holds true for complex contracts, all, let's say, IT-enabled contracts. It's extremely important. But the most important thing, in case of complex contracts that surround the ICT, in my opinion, is contractual leadership. You cannot write down every single thing. The contractual leadership has to be there. You have to be able to interpret the contract, and through a solution-centric approach, rather than putting your heavy feet and just saying, no, I'm not moving. So contractual leadership is something which is a gray area, and I think that's extremely important. AI can solve almost every single thing, but this is one thing that only we as leaders in the industry have to solve. Last but not the least, in fact, the second last thing, what I believe is consumer. Consumer centricity, consumer focus. You can make wonderful business models, can do a lot, but unless and until we give the consumer the best possible, that best possible experience, the uptake of that technology will not be good. Utilities can derive a lot of benefits. The businesses can derive a lot of benefits through IT interventions, but if we do not give the benefit to the consumer and do not make it salient for the consumer, I don't think anything can go forward. And the last thing that I would talk about is the unintended consequences of technology. We need to hedge the risks against them. Foolproofing. We do not certainly want a situation that I am developing a technology for voice recognition and a dog is barking, and then he runs away, and then after a while I'm running after the dog to open the application. We do not want that. We need to foolproof the application. We need to hedge the cybersecurity risks, which are major unintended consequences, as well as deal with the privacy issues, which over a period of time will gain saliency. Even right now, it's very important to ensure that the privacy related risks are attended to proactively before anything like that comes out into the public domain, or people find out that there is something which is happening which is compromising my privacy as a consumer. So that's about all from my side. Thank you very much, and thanks to IMA for inviting me in this program.
Mr. Kapoor, thank you so much. Thank you for also sticking to the time. I'm very grateful. Mr. Rawal, may I invite you for your session? Just take away from Mr. Rawal while you take the dais. I think to reflect on what Mr. Kapoor had to say, there are 2 or 3 important things I would want to make a statement. Ours is a business of planet. Ours is a business of people. Ours is a business of purpose. And right now, everything that we have heard, it's the alchemy of time when everything is coming together. And my thinking is that almost all companies now are going to be energy companies as we move towards net zero. And the third most important thing is the next 1,000 unicorns will be from the clean tech industry. I ask for forgiveness from all my panelists because we will have to adhere to 7 minutes. And if you see me waving hands or shuffling, that's a good enough indicator. It's 5 minutes. So please accept my apologies up front, and we'll stick to the time. Thank you so much. Mr. Rawal, up to you, please.
Thank you, Ketan. So first of all, thanks a lot for calling me to this dais. So I'll not take even 7 minutes, and I'll try, and you can always indicate me. Vishal very rightly brought out that we are living in exciting times. I think more than exciting times, we are living in interesting times. And why I'm saying so is that there is a Chinese curse that may you live in interesting times. Why this I'm referring to is that what brings us here is accelerating the digital journey of the ecosystem, energy ecosystem. And when we talk about utilities, this is most relevant. There are various trends across the world, across the humanity, I would say, in terms of climate change, in terms of temperatures. We are talking about 1.5 degree less than the pre-industrial times. an assessment shows that even if we do all what we are trying to do, net zero and everything, we'll be ending up at about 2.5 degree by the end of the century. And if we don't do much or we continue normal, we'll be ending up 4 degree. And that is the best case scenario is enough to sink about 466 large cities in the world in the water. So that's where the interesting times come into picture. Is it really to be sad about? Not. It's time to be really thinking different. Time to be challenging these assumptions which have gone into this assessment and think that 2.5 degree would be higher than the pre-industrial times. Try to think out of box and see what are the solutions possible. We are talking about renewables for sure. They are on track. We are talking about hydrogen. I hope it's on track. I understand there's lots of journey for most of the countries to travel to really capture energy in form of hydrogen and make it move to the right location and convert back into energy. We are talking about EVs, which will happen irrespective of what we do or don't do, because all the solutions which actually benefit people get adopted without any policy, regulatory, or even much of regime support. So EVs are the kind of solution which are going to benefit us, thanks to the world macroeconomic situation or geopolitical situation which has caused the oil to flow through the roof. So it will happen. But are we ready? And when I say are we ready, I am talking about utilities. Are utilities ready? That's where most interesting thing is there to be addressed. We talk about renewables. Renewables have their cost. Their PLF is 18%, 20% compared to thermal, which is 80%, 85%, 100%. Does it mean that we should really vouch for thermals? No, not at all. We should be replacing them, but then there's a cost. We are talking about EVs. Are we ready down the DT, distribution transformer? Is your infra sufficiently strong? There's again a gap. If all of us, we charge together in the morning around 7 o'clock on the same line which is coming to our home, say down the line if there are 50 houses, would your transformer take the load? Probably, that is a concern. So we are talking about hydrogen. The cost as of now is very high. We are talking battery. Again, cost is very high. Why I'm referring to these things, don't think I'm trying and be pessimistic about things. Actually, I'm trying to take a reality check with respect to another perspective which we need to think here on this platform is utilities. Utilities are not in good shape. We know post-pandemic they have been struggling. There have been cost of oil all across, which is going, and oil and gas which is going through to very high levels. The cost is borne by somebody. So utilities have to serve, and there are, I would see 3 C's instead of 3 D's which are being talked about, called digitalization, decarbonization, decentralization. There are 3 C's also for utilities angle, I am saying. These are from our angle, we need them, but C's are from the angle of utilities. They are probably carbon coming as a stress to them, cost and consumer. Is it wrong? It's not wrong at all, consumer to expect, because consumer is contributed to the grid and they can expect good performance. But these are the 3 pressures. Utilities are on inflection point to handle these pressures. Cost is going through the roof, consumer is expecting a lot, and carbon is to be handled through renewables, through demand supply management, DSM analysis, and various other things, projection of the cost, etc., etc. So these are the broader situations I thought I should bring out to take a reality check. Where do we stand in terms of the broad trends on the other side, which are the aspirations, broad issues on the other side, which are utilities are facing, and who is to solve? Utilities have to solve. They are in touch with us. We are seeking services from utilities. Ultimately, we need to strengthen them. And that's where today's talk of accelerating digital journey is very critical. I don't think conventional solutions or conventional thinking would solve it. It's the digitalization only which will solve it, and that's on the right track. That's the biggest positive I would like to draw home, is that digitalization is full move in the utilities. However, adoption is taking a bit longer than desired. As a country, let's probably try and pace up ourselves when it comes to adoption. Means we took time in terms of, we are taking time from batteries. We took time in terms of adopting, PV cells, manufacturing in the country. Probably we need to pace up on at least on hydrogen side and adoption of the EVs in terms of how we actually move together. So, but digitalization is obviously very critical in the journey. How digitalization can solve? It's a very, very specific or abstract word being spoken everywhere. Let me just exemplify you a few things before my time is over. So when I talk about digitalization, it means Vishal spoke about smart metering, it's in full swing. It needs to move faster. I seriously believe it needs to move faster. We need to actually quickly award projects and actually start running them on the ground. It needs to move faster because it is not a rhetoric about having smart meters and being smart. It's about critical need of the utilities. Unless they have the data, unless they know what they need tomorrow. See, so far utilities have been guessing that they need so much of energy, then faltering on that, paying DSM penalties, don't know from where to take, they're overbuy, try and sell on the exchange not catering for the situation, transmission network not being sufficient. They need to be bang on in terms of the expectation, requirement, and consumer expectations also. That's where this data would be very handy. Smart meter is not an end, it's just a start. It's just a start of digitalization, because unless you have the right data, you can't say anything about your consumer, you can't say anything about your projection and your demand requirements. Similarly, why smart meter would help you in EVs? See, as I said, if all of us charge at 7 o'clock together on a distribution transformer, it will sync. So there has to be slack identification. Meters can help you in slack identification of the grid in your down the line in your DT. They can give you on and off signals for charging of EV. So they have the capability. Similarly, prosumer side, net metering side, time of day, we can keep on and on and on. Why metering is just a start of it, and why we need to do it faster than what we are doing today. So similarly, I'll say, for example, P2P. Today industry suffers, cross subsidy goes all to hurt the industry because they have to pay higher because somebody has to be subsidized. That's okay. But why should they suffer? Why can't they have the option of buying from some consumers who are producing more and they are unable to sell in the grid because they get very low cost in the grid? If there is P2P, there could be bilateral transactions between the industry and the consumer. Similarly, there can be carbon aggregation at the consumer level. There's a carbon credit market which is coming up in a big way. Similarly, there could be large data rooms which can actually help in enabling sustainable solutions. Today, if I have to put an EV charging station, I don't know from where to get the information holistically. Can we have centralized data solution rooms in the country from where you can get all the solutions regarding the sustainability solutions or sustainability ventures? So these are the things which actually need lots of acceleration, and that's where I think today's topic has to be seriously brainstormed and thought, that how do we help utilities in adopting, because talking a lot about carbon, talking a lot about climate change, talking a lot about temperature is nice, good, but somebody has to translate on the ground, somebody has to take the financial hit of it, and that entity has to be strengthened, and that can happen through digitalization. So my only small request here, let's think how we hasten the process of digitalization in the utilities, and what are the key areas. At least we are working our company at 4 areas of digitalization utilities.
So last 30
we have to
seconds,
think
please.
more on this and probably structure it together. I'll save 10 more minutes for you. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mr. Mishra ji.
Good morning, or should I say good noon. We are in exciting time. Thank you, Ima, for creating this platform and having me here. I have a small presentation, if the team can help me, which will help me relate to you our journey for transformation that's relevant to the today's topic of accelerating the energy ecosystem digitalization. So our perspective, please next slide, please. When we talk of energy ecosystem, yes, rightly so, today the focus is on the edge, consumption, distribution side. But then if we, for the time being, say energy only the power, electricity, then this is the ecosystem, central to state, policy to trading, and number of entities. Now, when we say an energy ecosystem transformation across the journey, the action is spread over all these entities. And if you count the number of interfaces, it is humongous. Keep that in mind when I talk about my transformation journey and within Power Grid. Next, please. Okay, this is from this energy ecosystem where the digitalization process has started from asset operation and management of GenCos to say power exchange and data exchange market of 2008 and of 13-16, where the one nation, one grid phasor measurement unit state system, or for that matter, renewable energy and footprints and forecast about that. Now that's a journey which is laid back by today's standard, and the entire world doesn't have the patience for it. But if you go through a transformation project by project, process by process, entity by entity, let me assure you, time taken will be equal, not less. So we will have to handle it from the different perspective. Next, please. Digitalization as the decision making goes. For any entity, it's from investment approval, deploying the tools, promoting the end use, discovering the interfaces to be evolved, and providing add-ons. Now, by the time the next generation add-on comes, your procure to deploy cycle is, if it is 3 years, if it is 5 years, if it is 7 years, you have a change of technology itself. So the entities find it very difficult to, starting embarking on that journey from the perspective of market and supplier, and they need project tooling is fast, but business re-engineering which will create a catalyst is something which is difficult. So many times it is just not taking place as a reactive to the new tool. It's something like you have beautifully built highways. What was the first news came across after inauguration of Delhi-Mumbai highways first leg? There was someone traveling from the riverside on one of the rotaries, and there was an accident. Now these are powerful or entrenched local users. Do they change overnight? Same thing happens within your process or your company, where you create an infoban, you create a highway, you do have a solution, you do have a process solution, but there are powerful cross currents within organizations which, if they are not handled, more or less energy is precipitated there, and you do not leverage your initiative to deliver across the value chain. Be careful about that. Have your partners early on if you want to speed it up. Next, please. Within PowerGrid, if I have to share, capture in such short time, we had SAP for business transaction, SCADA for control and production, employee self-support services for individuals' existence within the administrative framework of the company, and e-office for file movement for facilitating the decision making across. But that's what you have tools from the market. Then you start thinking in terms of the process. You have automatic fault analysis system which delivers value to the POSOCO. It doesn't deliver values to me, but my interaction with power system operation company, it gives me the value. So I have to leverage multiple tools across it. Similarly, for logging grid parameters, they are easy. Recording substation maintenance data, that's for future, I can use my SAP, but for PowerGrid itself, we have created an advanced data analysis system for asset life cycle management. Now this is something which cannot be brought on. You have to have a critical mass, you have to have a solution, you have to have leaders like my current director operation, Mr. Tyagi is here, and of course his predecessor, Ms. Seema Gupta, who led from the front for business transformation, getting value out of digitalization, and that's an area which is simply missing in so many energy companies. If you treat energy as electricity, I'll just touch on what we are expanding now. Next, please. Within, say, digital transformation model across the company, use of GIS tool or national transmission or regional transmission asset monitoring center, creation of digital substation, dashboard for decision making. These are the areas where we work not for ourselves, but giving confidence to the market that you have to do it. So currently we have more queries. We are partnering with the state utilities for creating similar digital solutions for them. And impact is, of course, efficiency, performance, optimization of human resource. Optimization is today's more people would like to work from their desk than in the field. What can be done by machines should not be done by the people. That's the motto of next generation. And you won't be able to make an impact there. However, utilities may try. Everyone is learning the hard way. Real-time visualization of assets and centralization of monitoring is where the process begins but doesn't end there. If you think the process ends there, it is going to give you more problem than solution. Next, please. So overall, to recapture the journey, you individually you can have tools and you can have solutions from the market, but you can, unless you connect and build within your company, you will not have solutions which are immediate low-hanging fruits. Values will be built on those connections and integrated like procure to pay, build to retire, or design to deliver, or digital entities where paperless in all domain. That will take a long journey, and that's internal to one entity. You have number of interfaces when you talk about energy ecosystem, and if you expand energy to include transport, to include industry, to include your and my home where we would like cooking, or for that matter the transport to be dependent on this energy, you have your task cut out, where all the solution provider will have to look beyond their product and their delivery, will have to integrate across their product chain and standardize all the process interfaces for this transformation to take place in next 5 years, for every one of us to deliver to value for people who are waiting the solutions or entities to transform themselves before they start junking them. And that's the challenge which we have to act. Time is the essence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mishraji. Mr. Sharma, may I invite you? Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for arranging this. I actually don't have much to say once I've heard Vishal and Anil, but I thought it's very important to also spend some time how do we do it, and where Schneider or companies like Schneider can help to do this transformation. So I'm going to share a couple of slides, bear with me, and in case I'm not able to answer everything, we have a booth in hall number 9. Please do visit us, and we'll be happy to take further questions. So next slide, please. We are all excited by what India is happening in India, right? We heard from Mr. Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Modi on Friday. We heard Honorable Minister for Power R.K. Singh 2 days ago. I think we're all excited that India is going as the next powerhouse for the decades to come. We know that 500 gigawatts of renewable is coming. It's going to be the 50% of the normal power generation in the country. We're committed to deliver a carbon CO2 saving of almost 1 billion tons, and by 27 we believe the energy sector is only going to go up. Now all this is happening with the commitment that we want to go and become a net zero by 2070. Some of us believe that it can be done even earlier, but I think the problem is not the problem statement, the real challenge is how. So please, next slide. What we believe that the real solution, as some of my panelists says, is a collaborative approach. It's not about one or the other or the third. I think the whole ecosystem needs to come together, and this needs to tie up. Right? Now, there are a couple of fundamental objectives we need to achieve from this. I mean, sustainability is a common theme in a call across the companies, in the communities, in the regulators, in the government bodies. I don't think it's a nice story to talk about. If you have a young kid or an older parent or even whatever situation you are, you would know how people are breathing in certain parts of the country, right? And I have a witness at my own home. It's very difficult, and if we we don't act now, it's not a situation for discussion. It's a practical problem in our lives. And if we don't fix it tomorrow, the next generation is really going to suffer. So sustainability for us is not anymore a discussion. It's the core of everything we do. And I think a lot of our other panelists and everybody in this room present, I'm sure, agrees on that. Now, what we also talk about the need of electrical resiliency, right? How do we ensure that we have lower losses? We talk about that already and outrages. But the most important is how do we bring the flexibility in the grid? Right? And this is, I think, an important factor which we have been discussing again, but this needs to reinforce that the flexibility becomes an important factor of the grid, and this will help us to build a more resilient and, of course, a more ecosystem. What I'm talking about is collaboration. We need technology to help. We're talking about, again, multiple technologies which are available. Semiconductor happens to be another one which can actually accelerate that move towards those stories. We, of course, need regulatory support. And what I mean by here is we need more market-driven regulations than the government-only regulations, right? And here the market-driven regulation is about how the whole ecosystem comes together and is regulated in a way that we deliver the promises of what we are looking at tomorrow. And I just can't agree what Vishal said earlier, that the prosumer, the end guy, and Anilji also said earlier, that the prosumer, the consumer, if he does not buy the story, because he's the one who needs to participate to the game, and the consumer, the moment the consumer starts to become an active role player in the story, that's when he starts to call prosumer, but that's when the game really starts changing. So for us to tie all these 5 elements and objectives, we really need to go and look at new business models. How do we really work in bringing the electricity from the grid to the plug? How do we do it? What are those different go-to-market models? How do we ensure that the renewables and revenues are a close shared, and it's not between me and you, it's us? And finally, how do we ensure that the home is connected? Now, to build further, okay, so what we are looking at as a technology has the key role to play. And for us, and I'm sure a lot of others in the room, it starts from the grid, but actually ends at the plug. And this whole ecosystem needs to connect together, talk to each other, and ensure that we deliver the promises or the objectives we're looking at. Now, a small example, illustration of how our world looks like, our planet looks like. So if you're talking about a utility, who's talking about grid automation, which is resilient and scalable, but when do I take it in a capital lighter mode? How do I actually help them to make it more capital light? How do I use more DARs? How do I use this energy resources which are distributed? How do we really engage them? How do we incentivize the prosumer? If that is not happening, then I think this is not going to solve. So the real equation we want to think about, collaborate about, is how the DNOs are actually becoming a platform service providers. Now, this is probably on the top side. At the bottom, the consumer. If I have a connected home, I have a home automation system. Of course, with the home automation system, I want to be more energy efficient. We all know the more energy we save, that's already a big contribution to the energy grid, right? That's the most cleanest form of energy. How do I make those microgrids actually help me to become that independence? And how do I achieve the net zero? So the role of a consumer should not be now just an energy consumer, but actively participate, and that's where the role shifts from a consumer to prosumer. Now, I would like to share a small example. And again, Schneider of School is ready to play the role in the story. But this is one example which we've just built and launched in one of the geographies of the world. The sound may be working, thank you. But the whole idea is, how do we empower the prosumer? How do we empower the consumer? Thank you. That gives you at least a flavor of what we're talking about. But this is not only limited to a PowerPoint. As we talk, we're already experimenting 2 pilots. One is our headquarter in France, the office we have, and we're here actually working a full demand response experiment with the French grid, and we actually piloted. We could have triggered some messages and actually contribute back, or the energy we could say from for the grid from the building. Real application. It's a real experiment. We're also already in a pilot proof of concept phase in India, where a smart home will be connected through a utility, and then how do we build that stories forward? Again, I'm too early to talk about it, but I think these pilots will help us to give that confidence how I build the future of tomorrow. I am rushing just to make Ketan comfortable, but in a final slide, I just want to confirm that the end-to-end solutions are available. We need to find the last time connectivity within the DERMS, optimize the supply chain, expand the possibilities of these DERs, and then ensure the prosumer is actively playing in that role. And across these architectures, whatever we see here, there are technologies available, right? With A company, B company, C company, D company. What we need is a uniformed architecture, an orchestrated architecture, which is more probably digitally driven. And then how do we bring all the stakeholders to solve this problem? So again, thank you so much for sharing, Ketan. I was as fast as I could be, but appreciate giving the dice,
thank you,
and
Mr.
happy
Sharma.
for sharing these thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Thank you. Mr. Banerjee, may I invite you to share some of your experiences, please? I'll give a gentle reminder at 6 minutes. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, power is such an important parameter because it's the prime mover for the growth of GDP of any country, and India trying to be a $5 trillion economy, and then maybe 7.5 and 10 and maybe the largest. So power is the topic of discussion. But let me tell you that there has been a change in the way the power is generated, transmitted and distributed. Previously it was centralized generation. That means huge ultra mega power plants of 4,000 megawatts coming up, you know, and maybe before that 600 megawatts, and they were dispatching through various transmission lines and coming into the distribution part. But now, because as we all are, the entire world is veering towards net zero by 2070, it is very essential for us that we walk on the trends of 4Ds, that is decarbonization, decentralization, digitalization, and obviously disaster management, because as the climate changes, we are seeing disasters all around the world. So power utilities need to make their network so resilient that it comes up fast. I'll take this topic before I start the other ones, because in Calcutta we faced Amphan in the year 2020, height of pandemic. Everybody was indoors, and it was one of the worst in 150 years, but we restored power within 5 to 7 days, which is a world record, because we had ring main interconnected systems, we had SCADAs, we had GIS, we had workforce automation, we had GPS enabled crew. And going forward, when we talk on the pandemic, when people were not on the streets, and then we need to maintain, what we used was predictive maintenance instead of preventive maintenance. And what do you mean by that? You have an IoT, Industry 4.0, sensors embedded into various transformers, switchgears and equipments, which including drones and pan-tilt cameras, which relay data online, and through a big data analytics, we understand before the thing fails where the hotspot is, and hence there was no failure even during the pandemic time. So this is how a utility have to move, because to a utility which serves millions of consumers, one consumer, any consumer, is not to take even a minute of interruptions in urban cities. I've seen it in Bombay when I was, and even in Calcutta. So when we talk on decarbonization, we understand that there should be a rise of renewable energies, and that's why we say 2070. Why? Because we need to transition. Let me tell you that whenever the demand rises, and it has been rising in the last year, it's rising in this year, the peak demand cannot be met by power which is not dispatchable. because you can't ask the sun to blow more or the wind to wind to blow more or the sun to shine brighter. So what do you need at that point of time? You need to ramp up your power plants, and those are driven by fossil fuel. But the point is, people who have these thermal capacities, it's been asked that don't retire plants, because we are a developing economy and we need what is called energy security and energy affordability. We can bring in any number of technologies, but let me tell you, the payment will be made by the end consumer, and the end consumer cannot or does not appreciate increase in their tariff. So point is, when the fossil fuel plants are giving out power, they should be clean, their SOx NOx should be clean, they should have an FGD, etc., etc. But at the same time, whenever the renewables come up, today renewables may cost you 3 rupees 50 paise, etc. But when you add a storage, that is battery storage or any other storage, you see that jumps to 12 rupees. Will the consumer pay 12 rupees when you are paying 5 rupees or 6 rupees for coal power? No. So we need to understand how do we calibrate this. It is not a one-sided game, and hence the transition till 2070. I'm trying to make a point which is relevant because we daily monitor how much power is needed. Now, what we say, we have exchange. Yes, we have exchange. You know what happened to the exchange? During this crisis, nobody talks. The power shot up to beyond 20 rupees, 24 rupees, and somebody capped it at 12 rupees and 8 rupees, right? So exchange were meant to be sold power to the consumer at an affordable price. When we go to buy green power on term ahead and day ahead market, they are rising through the roofs. So where is the parity? Where is the parity? Will the consumer pay that money? Will you pay that money? Will you pay 16 rupees or 14 rupees for 18 rupees for power? You will not. There will be huge uprising in the streets. So let us accept the one fact that while we talk technology, the technology has to be inclusive. The technology has to be in such a way that the consumer does not feel the pinch of it. I may be very straight, but that's the fact of life. And that's what utilities are about and serving consumers are all about. Now coming to that, I feel decentralization is important. Why? Because when you thrust power through green open access, just greater than 100 kilowatt from 1 megawatt, huge power will flow. The transmission lines, I feel, are not so strong to carry that power and variations at different parts of the day. So what should happen? There should be embedded generation in the cities, in the towns, and they can do it, yes, through solar rooftops, more and more. And maybe battery storage, if the size is low, if the cost economical. So what we did in our place, we have an islanding scheme. Because what is an islanding scheme? If the grid fails, what happens? We go into darkness? We may, but the emergency services like railways, like hospitals, like special telecom cannot fail. So there's an islanding scheme which islands from the grid and itself, gives the power to that essential services. So point is, whenever such embedded power is there, we may not, because if you want to increase the transmission capacity, the gestation period is nothing less than 3 to 4 years or more, and ROW is a point which is invert. So I would say more of decentralization. So we tried out, distribution scale battery storage, we have tried out microgrid at our places, and so on and so forth. Now point is, when we talk on decarbonization, yes, the use at the point of electric vehicles is a zero tailpipe emission. It's a no-brainer. It should be done. But I always hear that we don't know if the power everybody charges at the night at one time. I feel there is a time of use tariff which should be used, and when the power is low, that is lean period for the utility and the consumer, that night time, like you charge a mobile phone, you should charge your buses. You should charge the cars or the electric vehicles, so there is a uniform load profile. Because what happens when we put in capex, let me tell you, the variation from the minimum load to the maximum load, if I take our city of Calcutta, somewhere between 500, 600 megawatt to 2,300 megawatt, that is the variation. And the average may be around 1,500 megawatt. So point is, we need more time of use tariff in the end consumers, and to incentivize, and yes, there is an incentive, so that all this charging can be done during the night time, and the profile is, well maintained. Now, obviously, going forward, there will be challenges of V2G, G2V, etc. But let me tell you, while we talk on net zero and emissions, it is not only the power sector which emits. Buildings emit 38% GHG. I don't know, we never talk on buildings. So, point is, you should bring an energy code, which is there, ECBC. You should make a clean building. We make our clean buildings. That means wherever my building is there, we make it green, sustainable, whether are substations and all. So there should be green buildings. What happens to the CNI sector, the industry? What happens to oil furnaces? Should they not go to electric furnace? What happens to DG cells? Should they not convert to battery energy storage? So, whether it's a transport sector, industry sector, commercial sector, and the utility, the responsibility is equally divided. Does not, bank too much on one side. This needs to happen. So, when we talk on climate change, the CNI sector and the transport sector should be included in that. So that today, when we talk on our city in Calcutta, it has 90 buses, 120 buses electric buses are being procured, electric ferries being done, metros being running through the system. These are all ways of doing it.
May I
Well,
request
coming
you
through,
kindly conclude, sir.
yeah. You have to allow me 2 minutes. Okay. So point is, when we talk on what we have done, very simple. We have done few technologies in digital side. We have a self-healing system wherever we use, PLCs to 33 kV can interchange. We have used immersive realities like AR, VR, XR, and we have launched a video calling on our call center. We are going to launch the metaverse. So utilities, I would say, from my point of view, is ahead of when people think that we have to yet do this. But let me tell you, we also are using AI ML to understand and predict our faults where the voltages are low. And in terms, when we go to creating, consumer side, digital twins have been created so that you can see what has happened to a network if something fails overnight, and you can see the protection relay, and you can do the diagnosis and do it from remote. Similarly, we have done a high-touch experience in no-touch world other than chatbot or WhatsApp bot. We have launched a voice bot which is multilingually Hindi, English, and Bengali, which understands through natural language learning and processing, and is now handling about 25% of calls, so that those calls, the call center can be, customers don't wait, and we have to do faster. And finally, on disaster management, I said we are building a disaster management, and smart meters or clean energy is not the panacea for every problem in our country. We will have to look at the affordability and security. Thank you very much.
Narcis, may I request you, please?
Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks to the organizers for inviting us and for having such an amazing speakers. For me, it has been a year moving around India so far, so I have met in person part of the speakers, and I'm also thankful to the organizers for finally, after 15 years, meeting again Vera. Long time no see her, so it's good to see again us in India. So, what is grid expertise? We need some time to present our company. Grid expertise is a new company. It's 2 years old company, but we belong to the Enel Group. Enel Group is one of the biggest utilities in the world. Enel manage 13 discoms around the world. We provide as Enel energy to 75 million of PODs. So grid expertise is part of this group. And being inside Enel, it's a great advantage for grid expertise. Grid expertise at the end is a carve-out of Enel, and all the team, all the people, all the technology that was inside the Enel Group now is in grid expertise. No? All the team, all the experience, introducing technology, introducing a smart grid concepts, smart meters for more than 20 years now is based on grid expertise. No? So this is a great advantage for our customers, for the utilities, because first of all, we offer solutions, we offer technology that has already been tested, validated in our grids, in our networks. And second, it's a great advantage because the team in grid expertise is an experienced team in the utility world. I mean, who have been around in the utility business for a lot, so the team has a lot of experience about problems that utilities had in the past, problems that Enel has faced, and we are willing to share those experience, those lessons learned with the different utilities around the world. No? So it's not, grid expertise is not only about solution provider, it's also being a trusted partner for the utilities. No? A trusted partner in the sense that you can rely on the knowledge of the people that belongs to grid expertise. And this is a great example. So far, as grid expertise and Enel, we have deployed 55 million smart meters. So this 55 million smart meters deployment has been achieved during 20 years. 20 years of deploying that technology, 20 years of operating smart meters. Obviously, we have a lot of lessons learned about how to deploy smart meters more efficiently, how to be more effective. And also, we got a great information about how to make smart meters better. No? So when we approach utilities, I mean, each utility is in a different stage. You know? Some utilities are quite advanced, some utilities are starting the digitalization process. No? So what we try to understand is what are the objectives of the utility for deploying smart meters? Do you want to reduce non-technical losses? Do you want to improve the efficiency of the data reading? What exactly your objective is? No? So this is key in trying to offer the best solutions to the discoms. No? Part of these lessons learned that we have is that the deployment of those smart meters is also key. I mean, the operational efficiency of that deployment, it will cost to the discoms a lot. No? If you can optimize that deployment, that will save you a lot of millions of US dollars, or rupees in that case. Another interesting part of the lessons learned that we had is that the smart meters, the installation should be very customer-centric. We need to think always in the customer. No? And as the keynote speaker mentioned, no, at the beginning, Vishal Pupar, you mentioned, we need to be customer-centric. And the smart meter is a great example. You have to have the customer always in mind. Before the installation of the smart meters and after the installation, the customer is key. But grid expertise not only offers solutions on the smart metering technology, we are also working at the same time with other solutions that can provide basically savings to the discoms. No? Savings in terms of CapEx optimization, OpEx optimization. We are using different technologies that can provide those savings. This is just an example of the savings that we are getting in our grids, in Enel grids. No? Using those new technologies like virtualization. Virtualization means that you can move part of your hardware into software, and then you can reduce the CapEx cost and the operational cost of those devices. No? We are working a lot on digital twin not only for the network, but also for the asset. Digital twin for the asset can provide to the utility a lot of savings in the operational cost because you can improve your predictive maintenance. You can improve also routine like vegetation management. So there's a lot of benefits. We really think 2023 would be the year of digital twin and augmented reality in the discoms. No? Again, this is just a glimpse of what we offer. We have a booth here in Helikrama. We are happy to talk with you, share our knowledge with our team based in India. And yeah, I forgot it, but Grid Expertise is multinational. But the first legal entity that we opened out of our legacy countries in Europe and Latin America was India. Okay, so we really believe in that country. And again, we are open to receive you in our booth and keep the connections. Thank you.
Narcissus, thank you so much. Mr. Robert, may I invite you, please? Thank you.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I can already see the time is up, but I hope it starts again.
We are living the decade of action. To reach the
That's
net
not
zero
mine.
goal in a world where the need for electricity
Can someone help me?
is the only
So I
option
think,
left.
first of all, I would like to thank EMA and the WUS for organizing today's session. I personally found the current presentations very engaging. I've taken lots of notes, and I will try to refer to some of them in context of my presentation. So really, really exciting. So we're not going to talk about the energy transition because I think we have discussed a lot about it the whole day. We've heard a lot about it also when the conference was open. And I think the question was also, how do we get there? Yeah? Where's all the smartness in the grid? And while I'm not going to try and answer all of them at one time, I think here are some examples which could help accelerate the energy transition from a technical perspective. So on the one side, you're looking at distributed energy resources hosting. How do you actually increase the capacity of that? And that is basically by moving from slow manual decision-making processes to looking at how technology can help you optimize the capacity you already have without having to add capacity to it. We spoke about flexibility, and we heard also in previous presentations about the shift from CapEx to OpEx models. So that's one part of flexibility which needs to go in. The second part which needs to go in is obviously you have to see that the information you have is able to flow between the systems in a more effective way. And I think that is also something which gives utilities lots of flexibility. We spoke also very briefly about, let's say, the last mile and us not being having sufficient transparency on that. And I think here also there's a lot of technology which can help you get transparency in the last mile, and by use of artificial intelligence you can do a lot to help optimize that. And finally, of course, the point is, okay, how do you take your grid to the next level? Shifting from manual intervention to self-healing and automation. And the answer is very simple. It's software. We're talking the whole time about software. It is about how you integrate your IT and OT. And finally, it is also the question of how you actually design this. And I'd like to focus on those first. So the first one is one of interoperability, because there is not going to be one company or one user who's going to be able to do it all on his own. The point here is it is only going to work in an ecosystem, and that means you have to be able to actually bring these things to work together. The second topic is one of the system being modular. Modular means that finally someone only uses what he needs. So the point here is also, don't get a big solution if you need a small one. Focus on what you need and also pay for what you need. This is also one of the topics which give utilities more flexibility who are anyway continuously cash-strapped. The next topic is one of openness. Openness means it should not only be tied to a single vendor, but it should allow the customer here in this case, the utility to be able to collaborate with other partners to build new solutions based on the data. Let's say if you get a lot of data coming in via smart metering, you should use that data to do different things, and I will talk about that briefly just now as well. And finally, we heard that, I think also in the opening speech, it's about being resilient and cyber secure, because where you have data, there's always a risk of this being misused. So let's talk about actually how this can work. And I want to give you one example on network model management. By having, let's say, a tightly integrated network model management, you are able to see that planning data, operational and maintenance data can be tightly integrated, and as a result of that, there can be massive savings. It's not only the savings you have in time, but it gives you a sound basis for future decisions, because now you're not making decisions based on your gut feeling. Second topic, we heard about smart metering a lot today. One of the key topics here is not about only getting the complaints, but avoiding them in the first place. So here, digitalization can reduce the number of complaints you get from a customer actually because the quality of the billing data is correct. Now, if you're anyway collecting data on metering, then the question is, how do you use that data further? And we've seen by actually integrating meter data management with planning data that you can reduce the technical losses in a distribution utility by about 1%. And finally, the question is, we spoke about DR hosting, is how can you actually integrate more DRs into your grid while not having to expand the capacity? And let me show you this. While we were talking the whole time about investment in infrastructure, if you look at the type of DRs which are going to go in, then this is not going to be enough. The DRs which are going to go in are going to be all the PV panels we spoke about, all the heat pumps we spoke about, all the e-vehicles we spoke about. Yeah, we heard 15,000 buses are going in, there are lots of more cars going to come in. So all of this adds additional complexity into the grid. And what I want to say, and I think this is also the final message, is that if we want to do this correctly, we must make sure that we don't only focus on the infrastructure, but see that we get the right software in place so that we have an open, interoperable grid which allows the grid to achieve the performance it needs to have. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Mr. Herman, will you begin?
Good morning, good afternoon. Yeah. Thank you. Well, in this very short time frame, I would like to speak about some elements on what I called the perfect storm. That is where the energy transition meets the digital transformation. In Europe, the market model differs than in India, so I will mainly focus on what we learned and what insights we got. And I will show you also some examples. And then for you, it's to reflect on what did this could mean for India. I will be around for today and tomorrow, so if you want to go deeper in the discussion, feel free to contact me. First, some general insights. When we talk about the energy transition, new personal connections are needed. The energy system of the future will not be built on the silos of the past. Technology, markets, regulations are very strongly interrelated. If the government issues a new Digital Services Act, who do you send there? Your public affairs manager or your IT manager? And also, systems will only work together if people work together. Then second important element is access to energy is a basic right. So the market should work for the society and not the other way around. And certainly, we should focus much more on transition strategies and on change management, and not only talk about content all the time. The system operators in the Netherlands face a big problem due to over-enthusiastic subsidy schemes on DER. They have major grid capacity problems, both on the feed-in as on the consumption. Also, the low voltage grid is coming under stress due to also the low level of digitalization. And in trying to solve these issues, they face problems like lack of grid capacity, they face lack of capital, they face lack of technical staff, and moreover, they face lack of time. Then I start with the digitalization part and give you some general insights and learning here. When we go into the digital ecosystem, you should integrate your IT department in your business. It's not a cost center anymore. And you should also make sure that the IT people really get an outside-inside mindset. Then when we talk about data exchange, it's not an issue on talking on a protocol or on a data format anymore. Data exchange is a business transaction, and it is defined in terms of business, legal, technical, and operational aspects. And finally, and this is maybe the most important one, if you go through this journey, you will require business agility, and that you can only get if you create a loosely coupled IT architecture in your organization. Different parts of your business might go into different directions with different speeds. Then let me say some learnings on smart metering. First, a smart meter, a real smart meter, is more than a dumb meter with software on it. It's just a component in the digital ecosystem. Secondly, I said it was said already earlier, rolling out smart meters is a completely different business than operating them. So prepare well for large operational scale processes when you start to collect data. Third one, from the customer perspective, privacy. Pay attention to privacy because the smart meter data reflects personal behaviors. And this requires that you earn and maintain the trust of your customers in this. And last one is decentralizing of data processing. Make sure that when you roll out smart meters, you create a modular type in which you can also decentrally, in the edge, processes other applications on open APIs. I show you here some examples. I will not go into depth what the use cases could be if you start to use smart meter data for low voltage grid management or maintenance and operations. That is significant. And in the Netherlands, this only became possible because we came as a grid operators to an agreement with the Dutch Data Protection Authority on a code of conduct on how to use smart meter data for low voltage grid management purposes. Here you see an example where we monitor voltage violations, and this is absolutely important because as the voltage goes up, because everybody is feeding in, smart inverters might switch off, and then customers start to complain in large amounts because they do not earn money from feed in anymore. We rolled out for 90% smart meters in the Netherlands, 8.4 million, and in different generations and in different phases. And we are now in a phase of defining the 5th generation. And we will go for a modular design, where also on open APIs in the edge applications could run, applications from the market parties, applications from the system operators, including enhanced control for the customer over his or her data. And I show you here a demonstrator project where you see on the left side the concept of this modular smart meter, but also on the right side where a gateway could be added on to the existing rolled out smart meters. And if there is a system operator app running on this gateway through integration with the existing SCADA DMS system, that would really create real-time observability of the low voltage grid, and it would support actions from the system operators on balancing, on curtailment, on the moment that market-based flexibility cannot be offered. Then on flexibility, 3 elements I would like to give here. We need a real different mindset to operate the system. We are shifting from supply follows demand to demand follows supply. We also have to adopt a one system approach. There is many grids, but there's only one system. And if both DSOs and TSOs start to work on system level, we must ensure that non-action of one of them would create harm to another system operator. And last but not least, if distribution system operators start to act on system level, for flexibility, requesting flexibility from the market. They should know when and where congestion could be expected. And this requires good load forecasting capabilities, good predictive load flow analysis at all grid levels, at all time frames. And this is really a new ball game for distribution system operators. In the Netherlands, we implemented the platform as an example, which is jointly owned by the TSO and the DSO, in making sure that we have a coherent and consistent way of how we deal with market-based flexibility, and it's operational since 2019. Then on data exchange, the third topic I would like to address. We should bear in mind that data is the new money, so access to data should be accommodating a level playing field, both in society as in the market. We should also prepare for cross-sectoral exchange of energy data, because energy data might be also relevant for other sectors, like the transport sector, like the building sector, like the financial sector, and like the public sector. Third, we create a separate data exchange layer, which is needed between the data requesters and the data source. And the advice will be to implement this in this data exchange layer, independent, generic, reusable services like identification, authentication, and authorization. And in doing this all, implementing this data exchange layer, or Europe calls it the data spaces, start with the governance issues first, before you dive into the content with all the stakeholders involved. This is what we did in the Netherlands. It was operational since April last year. We created a new data exchange legal entity, which implements all the agreements with what all stakeholders in the market facilitating forum agreed upon. And in this new market facilitating forum, all parties from different sectors convene, and they make arrangements on this. Then my fourth and last topic is about energy sharing between consumers. 3 points I would mention here. First, and there's also the statement of the European Commission, the customer is in the heart of the energy transition, so empowerment will be very important for them. Then secondly, use local what you produce local, and only for shortage and surplus you interact with the market. This will lead to significant wins for the customer, because for the citizens it will lead to cheaper and affordable energy, especially in Europe with the crisis going on in Eastern Europe, and also lead to more social commitment. For the system operators, using local for local will reduce the stress on the distribution grids. It will reduce the stress on the capex expenditure, and it will reduce the stress on the workforce challenges. So that is where energy communities and grid operators really should work together. And for the government, it accelerates an affordable energy transition as citizens become co-investors in the energy system. They increase the uptake of DER, renewable generation, and at the same time the decrease of fossil fuel. Implementing energy sharing and collective self-consumption schemes actually represent a very fundamental change in the market model and in the operating model. We are shifting from supply of energy to facilitating energy transactions between the producer and the consumer. And that's we have to bear in mind. Energy sharing in Netherlands and in Europe is a very hot topic on the moment. The discussions goes on the taxonomy, it goes on the perimeter of the energy communities, it goes about how local markets should look like, it should go on what local prices should be, and the interaction with the wholesale markets. Also, it should allow multiple suppliers or actors to be active on one customer connection at the same time. And for the distribution system operators, the task is to figure out how to allocate which metadata relates to which company.
Let's conclude, Peter, please. Thank you.
I'm coming to my last slide. My last slide is on the European Action Plan on the digitalization of the energy system. The European Commission issued this plan in October last year, and you see the themes which are covered there here listed in the slide, and the 4 topics which I addressed are also in there. So with this, I would like to end my presentation, and I would like to conclude that we're actually just at the beginning of our journey. So really prepare for the perfect storm. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Veera, may I invite you, please?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. It's always with great delight that I come back to India. I often come back to India and reconnect with different people of the teams and former colleagues. So I'll try to be quite brief and perhaps be the first one to keep my time. So I won't go into a lot of detail, but try to sum up some of the key messages that we heard this morning about how to accelerate digitization in the energy transition. So clearly, we have to recognize at the moment that this decade is going to be the decade of electricity, and more than ever, a decade of grid. In different areas of the globe, we can see that we have been advancing on changing the generation mix, decarbonization, and often the investments needed in the grid, both in infrastructure as well as digitization, have been somehow lagging behind. And this has been now very well understood. It has become a major bottleneck for our path to net zero. Hence, we see ambitious investment packages coming up, Europe Green Deal, US IIGA, as well as many programs in India. And this is going to be very much about supporting electrification as a key way to decarbonize our energy industry, while doing this, integrating more decentralized energies, making sure we take this opportunity to modernize the grid, greatly thanks to digitization. And with all this, we continue decarbonizing our energy mix. This comes with several problems we're solving for our industry, since none of these tasks can be done without having some important new technology steps. And as a CTO, that's very much where I play. So obviously, as we decarbonize the mix, we have quite a lot of issues to deal with variability, as well as integrating power electronics interface. This means that we need to have a more reactive grid, more advanced controls, and much better connection between what's happening at the edge of the grid, at the distribution, different areas of transmission, and answering these while maintaining the grid stable. I have to say, Power Grid in India has given a huge step to that with the WAMS program, with the most ambitious number of PMUs, and this is a critical path into maintaining this stable grid. Obviously, we're changing the nature of generation, and I know that India has quite ambitious programs on PV, on wind, but as well as conventional generation, and we need to make sure that this transition is done with a stable grid. Significant transformation is happening also at the distribution network. As I mentioned, decentralization, we're moving into a grid with two-way flows, and not the grid where we just kind of a side row from generation to distribution. This makes quite a change in protection systems. This requires a modernization of substations, as well as a much better integration of systems that are used at enterprise level to operate the grid. Energy management system, distribution management systems, DERMS, and all of this requires a level of interoperability across the different systems that my former colleague mentioned. And obviously, a lot about what's been talked today is about what's happening on the load side. We expect a lot in terms of increasing electrification, more load, as well as decarbonizing industry. We're adding loads that are moving, such as electric vehicles, and more difficult to predict, with prosumers. And this indeed means that we need a better integration of these flexibilities into the overall grid operations. So I would say, in a nutshell, we're addressing issues with resiliency of these grids. We're addressing issues of variability and decarbonization of the grids, as well as the way we are integrating the IT and OT systems. So I'll sum with some of key technology programs that are required to meet simultaneously the challenges I mentioned. One of the things is obviously about transformation of the digital infrastructure. A lot of it comes about removing silos we have from operational technology and data to maintenance and planning data. This obviously requires more modular systems with new architectures, microservices, as well as data interoperability across these different systems. We have a large program called Grid OS that redesigns the way we define our software end-to-end, from EMS all the way to DMS, DERMS, as well as from planning to real-time operations. We obviously need new technology to ensure stability of the grid, the power quality of the grid. Some of these things are done through digital, through situation awareness, predictions, and some of these will have to be done by the way new technology and new controls. Grid forming controls are quite critical to maintain this grid stable. In many cases, that comes with combining PV with battery storage with a layer of grid forming controls. It can also be based on STATCOM facts and so forth, but there isn't one solution fits all. Grid resiliency, energy efficiency remain critical in this transformation. And there's quite a lot of work done on the industry side on energy efficiency, but there's also quite a lot of new technology around increasing the resiliency. I had my colleague today from Schneider showing a very good demonstration of this. So quite a lot of the work we can do with microgrids, being that fully autonomous or microgrids that can connect, disconnect from the grid. This is a very important solution that's part of this full transformation of the grid. And obviously, reducing grid environmental footprint is critical. The grid is the largest infrastructure we have, made of number of equipments and materials and substances. And hence, as we develop this grid, we digitize the grid, we keep thinking on how we reduce its environmental footprint. So first, when I say the best way to reduce is to avoid overbuilding grid, and we mentioned before from all what digital can do so that we utilize existing infrastructure better, we improve maintenance of the grids, but there's also the constant improvement in terms of the materials and the life cycle analysis of all the new infrastructure that is built. So with this, time is up, and hence I will be around in the GE booth all afternoon. I'll be very happy to continue this interaction. Thank you very much.
Please stay, please stay, please stay, please stay. I have been rude. We've spoken about everything smart and intelligent, and I decided the way we are going to invite speakers over is alphabetically. You happen to be we, so that's why you were the last. And we kept you there and made you walk to the podium, so please accept my heartfelt apologies. My thinking is this whole session has been so very powerful when we've touched on all the elements. If you could touch base on how do we build talent in this area? How do we build talent? How do we attract talent to join? And more importantly, how do we bring diversity in the talent workforce? If you could share that with the delegates here, please.
Thank you. As I started this by saying that we have a massive grid investment program and grid transformation program, we have to obviously address several supply chain issues. Materials is one of them, but that's in no way the biggest one. The biggest one is talent. It's power systems engineering, but not only materials, mechanical engineering, capability to produce, and hence attracting new talent is critical for this. And obviously, if we miss the diversity, we're actually missing half of the potential talent that we could bring to the system, and hence the two come together. Attracting talent. Thank you. I believe attracting talent is essential in the sense that we are solving something the world needs. We are really addressing something that makes a lot of sense to the world, but we need to increase more the visibility and the importance of grid. Today, as I interact with young talent, everyone wants to work in renewables. That's quite clear. The grid is very much part of enabling the renewables, so passing this message. The second one is that from an engineering perspective, now I speak for myself, we do solve some of the most exciting problems from a technology, from applied mathematics, as well as from a social perspective, given that the grid is for its users. So I think in many ways, if we pass this message, will be extremely interesting. And last but not the least, on the diversity, I think it's a long-haul work. And I have to say that I speak for my own engineering team. We're about 3,000. We are struggling to reach 15% male-female diversity. But we do work a lot from mentoring programs to ensuring that from role modeling, supporting, as well as some changes we do about flexibility, the way we work, so that allow both parents to basically keep working as family grows. So there's a lot of things we need to continue doing.
Thank you. So with this, I've tried to ensure that I'm as close to the 90 minutes that were allotted to us. But I would just like to say I would want to thank the organizers. I would want to thank the panelists. I think we touched upon every elements that were required for digitalization of the energy ecosystem. I'd like to conclude this, and hopefully we are not there between you and lunch. So thank you very much, and look forward to a better day.
Thank you, sirs. It was indeed a great session with a lot of good speakers and insightful information. I now would request our chairman, Mr. Vikram Gandotra, to hand over a token to our esteemed delegates and speakers. Now I would request Sudhir sir to please give some token. Sudhir sir, please. Thank you. Go. Yeah. Now I would request for a group photograph, just for a couple of minutes, sir, please.